Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. What's up, guys? I'm feeling a bit vulnerable going into the recording of this episode today because I plan on covering a topic that I don't know if you're going to give a shit about. Or most men for that matter, because the topic I want to hit today is the essential role of pleasure in a man's life, in your life. And here's the thing, I'm not talking about these surface level pleasures like, tying one on, getting hammered one night, or jamming a fistful of gummy bears into your mouth, or jerking off to some porn. Like, not these surface level bits and grabs of pleasure that, quite frankly, leave you feeling worse off in the long run than they do anything else. They deplete you. I'm talking about the kind of pleasure that is soul enriching, that's generative in nature, that allows you to walk through life with a sense of fascination and wonder, that allows you to spring out of bed in the morning with a hop in your step, like just ready to devour the day, which is a very different kind of energy than waking up with anxiety and tension in the pit of your stomach every day for the laundry list of to-dos that need to get done. And maybe I'll just ask you to check in with yourself right now. Which category do you fall in? All right? Are you the guy who seeks these almost like fast food, bite-sized bits of pleasure, surface level, that maybe leave you feeling more depleted in the long run? Or have you cultivated this really intentional pleasure in your life that allows you to feel a sense of wonder and fascination with life? That's soul enriching. The kind of side-splitting laughter that somehow like touches your soul, right? That like lasts. And the reason why this is so important, guys, is because I've been starved for this kind of pleasure. And I want to share with you a little bit of my journey and where I'm at today, because it's very personal for me, but I'm also seeing it as a theme in all of the communities that I sit on top of here. The masterminds, the digital mastermind, the 12-month masterminds, the Facebook community, some of these other forums that I'm running. I'm seeing men starving from pleasure in their lives. And let me hit something very clearly up front. There's a very big difference between relief and pleasure. And most men, when I ask them about like, what do you do that you enjoy, or what gives you pleasure? Men describe the things that give them relief and not so much pleasure. And let me dig into this for a second. I just finished reading Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Eat, Pray, Love. Elizabeth Gilbert is one of my favorite authors. This is the third book of hers that I've read. This is her most famous book. This is the book that turned her from a fledgling artist into basically one of the best, most legendary writers of our time. And Elizabeth Gilbert had come to an existential crisis in her life in her early 30s. She'd gone through this divorce, lost all of her money. It was a brutal, bitter divorce, 2 years in the making. And it basically broke her down to her knees, right? And for her to reclaim and reconstitute her life, she decided to go on this year-long journey where she would spend 4 months in Italy, 4 months in India, 4 months in Indonesia. And she got a big book advance where, her publisher basically gave her $200,000 to go on that trip, and so she could write the book about it, which turned out to be Eat, Pray, Love. And she decided to go on this adventure first to Italy to explore pleasure. And the thing that brought her there was she wanted to learn how to speak Italian. There was no practical reason for her to learn Italian in her life. Right? There was no practical application. She wasn't working with Italian clients. She wasn't planning on writing in Italian. She just loved the language of Italian and decided to follow that there. And she loved Italian food. So every day for 4 months, all she did when she woke up in the morning was, I'm going to center my day around where I'm going to eat, who are the people I'm going to speak with. And for 4 months, she nourished her soul. And in this book, she brought up a concept that kind of blew my mind open. It's one of the things that led to this conversation today. And she said, this is something about Americans, okay? And I know that many of our listeners aren't Americans, but maybe you can relate to this as well. She says, generally speaking, Americans have an inability to relax into sheer pleasure. Ours is an entertainment-seeking nation, but not necessarily a pleasure-seeking one. Americans spend billions to keep themselves amused with everything from porn to theme parks to wars, but that's not exactly the same as quiet enjoyment. Americans work harder and longer and more stressful hours than anyone in the world today. Alarming statistics back this observation up, showing that many Americans feel more happy and fulfilled in their offices than they do in their own homes. Of course, we all inevitably work too hard, then we get burned out and have to spend the whole weekend in our pajamas, eating cereal straight out of the box and staring at the TV in a mild coma, which is the opposite of working, yes, but not exactly the same thing as pleasure. Americans don't really know how to do nothing. This is the cause of that great, sad American stereotype, the overstressed executive who goes on vacation but cannot relax. Oof. There's so much truth there, not only for how I've lived for so many years in my life, but so many of the men that I see in our communities. And she said, in Italy, there's this term. Italians are masters of what's called bel far niente, which means the beauty of doing nothing. We feel guilty, guys, when we do nothing, right? As soon as we settle down, we think about all the things that we could be doing for our families or for our work, like all those to-dos that are still piling up. We never have this moment of true pleasure, relaxing into pleasure. And when I read this, where she said, yeah, we're great at entertainment seeking, but we're not so great at relaxing into pleasure. Yes, we can watch a TV show and kind of induce a mild coma, but that's not exactly the same as pleasure. What this is, guys, is we're great at finding relief, but we're not great at understanding what brings us pleasure. That generative, soul enriching, wake up with a hop in your step every morning to seize the day kind of feeling. Relief is not the same thing as pleasure. Let me give you a metaphor. If I'm asking you to step on a tree trunk, balance on one leg, and I'm going to place a 200-pound boulder on your back, that is metaphorical for like that boulder on your back, that balancing act I'm asking you to perform. That boulder on your back is the pressure of your work, of your life, of the stress, of the anxiety, of your mind telling you're not doing enough or all the things you need to do. You know what that's like, right? And you may be really good at balancing that and grinding and holding that boulder. And when I take the boulder off your back, that like massive boulder off your back, that sense of relief can feel so good, but that's not exactly pleasure, guys, right? I'm just giving you a momentary break before the boulder goes right back on. And then you have to do it again. That is very different than getting off, destroying the boulder, getting off that one leg, that balancing act, and actually going and living your life. That's very different. And so one of the things that I've been noticing in my life is I have been starving for that level of pleasure. And I want to share with you like how I kind of cope with that in some of the not so great ways. Actually, maybe before I go there, I'll share with you a story that a few of the men from our Great Man Mastermind were a part of. So maybe about a month ago now, 5 of us rented a house in upstate New York where we decided to spend a weekend together to dream big about how could we reach 10 million men with this work that we're doing. And all of the 5 of us have a different role that we want to play in that. And we decided to take some magic mushrooms. Psilocybin is the active ingredient in there. And one of the more fascinating things that happened during this journey is one of the men in our group, and he has given me permission to tell the story. One of the men in our group was having a really hard trip. He couldn't speak. He was almost in like kind of a manic panicked state. He was pacing back and forth. We couldn't really communicate with him. You could see something was bothering him for hours, just on a totally different wavelength, having a really, really tough trip, wanting it to end, but it wouldn't. And we didn't know what was going on inside of him. And after about 3.5 hours of this, he goes over to the couch and he puts his hand up in the air. He lays down. He goes, "I'll see you guys tomorrow." and then just passes out for like 45 consecutive minutes. And we were kind of glad because he finally seemed like he'd gotten some relief. What ended up happening as he came down from his trip, and he shared with me later on that evening, he's like, Dominic, do you remember when I went and passed out on the couch? And I said, yeah, why? He goes, I tapped into your energy. He goes, the entire journey that I was on, that whole panicked state I was in, was because I was tapping into each of the men's energy, and I was feeling all of your guys' pain individually and trauma. And there was some really rough shit that some of the guys in our groups had experienced, and he could feel it. And he had never even known these other men's trauma. Like, he didn't even know the stories, but he had a chance to feel it and experience it. And then the guys were blown away by, like, how the fuck could you know this? This is why some of these psychedelic medicines are so powerful, and you have to treat them with respect. But what happened before he passed down on the couch was he went into my energetic field, into my world, and he was like, dude, I could feel how all of the people in your world come to you for so much. You know, like every man is coming to you with their pain, with their torment, with their challenges. All the women in your life come to you for pain and, you know, emotional support. And the weight of that was so overbearing that, like, I just had to pass out. I couldn't handle it. And he's like, and I wanted you to know that in the event that, like, you know, maybe there's some rest that you need. And that really, like, kind of hit me to my core. And I was like, I'm like, I don't feel physically tired, but there's something here that I need to explore. And when I brought that to Keith Bracci, who was on, you know, our podcast this past week, he said to me, dude, you're built, right? You're built to take on the weight of these kinds of communities and the men, you know, and what these guys bring to you. And I felt that to be true. But what I also felt to be true is that I'm starving for the more colorful bits of life, right? Play, laughter, feeling a sense of wonder and fascination, sexual intimacy, which I haven't had sex since February. You know, I haven't been intimate in a while, and that is soul nourishing for me. And what ends up happening, guys, when I end up in this state where I don't feel nurtured, nourished, when I don't have like side-splitting belly laughter on a regular basis, I got that when I was up there with these four guys for the weekend. We had those moments that just touched my soul because we were laughing so hard. When I don't have that, and all I'm doing is waking up and, yes, going through my morning routines, yes, doing my evening routines, getting my work done, but I'm missing the joy, the pleasure, the adventure, then something stagnates inside of me and life just becomes a fucking grind. Then I become the guy on the tree trunk, balancing on one leg with a 200-pound boulder on my back. And if I want to hit 10 million men, there's no way I can do that without the nurturing and the nourishment. And the way that I cope with that shit, guys, in some of the not most effective ways is what ends up happening when I tighten up over time. It feels like saran wrap that just gets tight inside my soul. If you guys know about like fascia that runs throughout your entire body, physically, that fascia is like saran wrap. When it gets tight, your body gets like super tight, and that's where injuries occur. That's why I get stretch therapy that breaks up that fascia. Well, I feel like this was emotional fascia, this, you know, just kind of saran wrap tighten around me. And when that happens, my heart closes. And how do I know when my heart closes? It's like when I hear my favorite songs and they don't even like reach me. It's like they bounce off armor. It's like when I'm walking around the streets of New York and it's a beautiful sunny day, I'm like, wow, it's a beautiful sunny day, but I don't feel it. Or I see a child eating an ice cream cone and I'll be like, that's cute, but I don't feel it. Or a dog at the dog park is going bananas and I love dogs. And I'm like, that looks like fun, but I don't feel it. I can it's like a computer pointing things out and describing, oh, that's cute. Oh, this is nice. And I feel nothing. And when I end up in that state, the only thing that seems to penetrate or puncture my armor, that fascia, that emotional fascia, is when I go and seek sexual pleasures. And the way that I do it is not from like my empowered state. It's like I will go and sex message a number of women who, I don't really have like a sexual relationship with, but maybe we've had a past, it's not open right now, but I'll try and like steal these little hits of, sexual excitement, or maybe seducer, and maybe, like pretend like we're about to open something up when really I just need something temporary. That's not what my great man does. But it's like metaphorically, I'm starving and I jam a fistful of gummy bears into my mouth. Keith gave me this analogy. Just jam a bunch of gummy bears in my mouth because I'm starving for anything. And then it gets in there for a moment. It feels good until it wrecks my digestive system. And then I'm like hungry 5 minutes later. And, as soon as you open the floodgates that way, like when you eat sugar, you need more sugar. When you drink, you need more booze. When I sext, I need more porn, or, going down that road. And it like the energy that ends up in my body pollutes me, contaminates me. It's like, it's really like my version of just binging on fast food, right? It gets in there. It's hard to turn off. The effects are long lasting and it sucks. But it's the thing that actually punctures that armor. And so what I have become really clear on is that it's essential for me, if I want to live a life where I can serve so many men who are coming to me with some heavy shit, that I've got to live a life where pleasure is at the center of it. And I've started to notice, one of my favorite shows of the last 8 years is Impractical Jokers. If you guys don't know the show, then maybe you don't live in the United States, but Impractical Jokers, it's a reality show. 4 best friends from Staten Island. These guys are like in their 40s. And it's a reality TV show where they prank each other. It's like a hidden camera TV show. And instead of pranking other people, they prank themselves to see like how embarrassed they can make one another. It's all really good natured. And it's incredible. It's like one of the most popular television shows in America and long running. And every time I've watched every episode, every bit, every segment, and I love these guys. Love them. And actually, they do a lot of, their skits right here, like where I live. I get my hair cut at the barbershop where they've done some skits. Their coffee shop that they've gone to is right below my building. Like, I've never met these guys in person, but they're all around. And I started to ask myself, like, why do I love this show so much? Because I don't really watch comedy television. I like Schitt's Creek and maybe some other shows, but it doesn't really I won't make time for a comedy show, but I've seen every single skit that Impractical Jokers has put out multiple times. And the reason why is because these are 4 best friends who love each other, who have known each other since high school, who are, a fledgling comedy troupe, like just kind of working shit jobs, doing improv comedy because they loved it. They had like 6 or 7 failed attempts at, creating a TV show until they hit it with this one. And the only thing they do is make each other laugh. That is their primary intent, is if we can make each other laugh with these skits, then everyone else will laugh with us. And you can see and feel that their joy is true. It's authentic. They're pranking the shit out of each other, doing ridiculous stuff, and they're crying in laughter. And I walk away from that show going like, I want that in my life. They're doing it for them, and there's joy and laughter every single day. They're creating stories and adventures, and they're living the dream. And so maybe the last place I'll share this, from a story that's recent in my life that I think I'd like you to know about is this past Thursday. So a week ago today, as I'm recording this, I went to one of the more significant and transformative psychedelic experiences that I've ever had. And I've been around the block a few times. I went to a private one-on-one sound healing ceremony with MDMA and mushrooms. What does that mean? There is a man who administers mushrooms, MDMA, which if you haven't heard of it, it's like Molly or ecstasy. It's definitely known as like a club drug, but really when you use it as a medicine, it's being used in medicine for soldiers who come back with PTSD to help confront some of the more tortuous experiences that they've had in war. And MDMA has incredible healing powers. It's being studied in Johns Hopkins University. Military veterans who have come back from war, seen the worst of the worst, who are on 30 different medications, who have tried everything, psychotherapy, acupuncture, none of it works. within 2 or 3 sessions of MDMA, have been able to resolve like lifelong trauma, right? Not for everybody, but like in many of the cases. So it has incredible healing powers. So I went to this private one-on-one session where I worked with MDMA, mushrooms, and this man for 6 hours played sound, tuning forks, stringed instruments, gongs, other sounds that he had on, on his stereo. And the stuff, the vibrations of the sounds like ripped through my system. And I went there specifically to work on opening my heart and healing my sexual energy. And what ended up happening during the very beginning stages of this journey was, as the music was kicking up and the sound vibrations were hitting my body and the medicine was kicking in, I felt that tightness, that fascial stretch, like that fascial saran wrap getting tight around my physical body and my emotional body. And it was painful. And then all of a sudden we hit this crescendo in the song ends, he hits the tuning fork, and then all of a sudden, boom, the saran wrap disappeared. And then this flood of energy shot through my body, and it felt like I was a teenager again, except with like the warmest, and teenager in terms of like energy and vibrancy and vitality, except it wasn't shook up bottle of Coca-Cola kind of energy. It was like this warm, radiant energy that felt so nurturing and nourishing. And it was like I had been crawling through the desert for days without a drop of water. And then all of a sudden someone hands me an ice cold coconut water. And I didn't realize how bad I needed it. And I just remember feeling how starved I'd been. How starved I'd been to feel that. And I could see in that moment that when I'm starving, that's when I descend into my lower self, and I go to these women and try and steal little sexual hits from them, which is not what my great man does. And instead of going to the outside world now to get those hits, I'm going to be cultivating that inner state of being where I feel pleasure, to let that energy flow. So I'm not dependent on others, the outside world, to give me what I need. I can cultivate that pleasure from the inside. And what's happened over these last 7 days, guys, and I've had some real ups and downs, coming back from an MDMA journey like that, fucks with your hormones, man. You secrete a lot of serotonin and you deplete a lot of serotonin in your system, the happy juice. And so I've had some real major ups and downs this past week, which is why you got to understand these psychedelics are to be respected and not to be fucked with. But on the days where I've been open, I've been able to walk through the streets of New York on some of the most beautiful days we've had here in 2021. And the sun hits my skin and it touches my heart. I see a child running around with a ball and it is so beautiful. It makes me cry. I borrowed my friend Monica's dog Jelly again last night, and he was spazzing like a motherfucker in this apartment when I'm trying to run a webinar. He's humping my leg, and it couldn't have been it was just, he was distracting little brat, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. And it was joyful, beautiful, nurturing. I had a call with Keith yesterday. We laughed, we had these great moments together, and it didn't require much. None of this stuff required much. I can feel that nurturing and that nourishing on the inside. Guys, pleasure is not the same as relief. And when we live in this world where, God bless him, David Goggins is kind of held out as the standard for what men should aspire to be, the toughest man in the world. And I got to speak, I don't know David Goggins' full story. I honestly have not resonated with the go crush yourself, kill yourself every day to be as tough as you possibly can, to even get to know his deeper, nuanced story. So maybe I'm selling him short. I have mad respect for a dude who's overcome the trials and tribulations that he's had in his life to become a Navy SEAL. But all we do as guys is put forward the dudes who kill themselves. I'm not interested in living that life. I want to live a life where I do high performing shit and enjoy myself and laugh like the impractical jokers through life. And I want my heart to be touched like a poet. I want to be like a Bon Jovi. I want to be able to write love songs like the greatest love song singers, Bruce Springsteen, right? I want that shit. I don't want to grind through life accomplishing all this stuff and feeling fucking dead on the inside. And the only way that's going to happen, because there's a goddamn void of role models, of men who are out there doing it, living a high-performing life, living a life of adventure, feeling light, having that hop in their step, twinkle in the eye, awestruck by the bountiful abundance of life. Can't name a single man who represents and embodies those characteristics that I have access to. So I'm going to be that man. And if you guys want to be that man, I know there are a few of us who are charting that course, who are planning on living that. And I know Keith is one of them, Brian's another one of them, and we're figuring this shit out. So guys, I don't know if you're still listening. I mean, hopefully you're still listening. If you're hearing this, you are still listening. Let me know if this resonated with you. And if it didn't, let me know that too. You know, that's just as good, because like it helps me to understand where you are in your journey. I don't know if I could have heard this message 5 years ago, or maybe even 3 years ago. I was too busy trying to figure other shit out. But if this resonated with you, let me know, right? Send me an email, come to the Facebook group, let it be known publicly. DM me on Instagram at Dominic Q. I'm going to link the Facebook group, my Instagram handle in the show notes. Leave a rating and a review. That's also one of the ways that we know if you love this particular episode. But let it be known. So if you want more of this, then I will talk more about it, but I never know until you guys tell me. Thanks for hearing it. And let's start to cultivate some pleasure in your life.